I'm John Smith, and welcome back to Kingdom Real.
Thank you for joining us. This is part 5 of Journey to Healing and Forgiveness with our guest, John Smith.
I know for myself, I didn't think about this before, but the reason why the hurt went so deep, if it had happened from people in the community, it wouldn't hurt as bad. But it happened from my friends, and they were Christians, and I felt like I was crucified. And in fact, I found a book, or somebody gave it, I can't remember, but the name of the book is Crucified by Christians. And the subtitle is Healing for Those Who Have Been. And I remember reading that book fairly early in this whole process, and oh my goodness, this book, I've since referred it to a few other people. And I had somebody on my staff pass around some other ones, like, oh man, don't do that. Because there's only one of two responses. Either you go, that's one of the most powerful things I've ever read, or you hate it. Because it will challenge to the very foundation your belief in the sovereignty of God.
Absolutely. Well, I would imagine the whole process of this did.
It did. And I won't give away the thrust of that book, because unless you want me to.
We'll save that for another
We'll save that one. Okay. So here was my toughest assignment to get well. It was impressed upon me partially through the book and partially through just talking to God and hearing what he wanted me to do. And he said, you need to completely forgive every single one of the people who said those things to you and about you.
I can't even imagine where you start with that.
Well, I really didn't know either. Other than the fact, like, well, there is no way I'm going to be able to do this on my own. And so I went to God and says, well, if that's what you're asking me to do, then you better show me how. And I need you to help me with this. I can't do this on my own. It's just too deep, too hard, too many people, too many things. And so I made it a practice to pray several times every day, just asking God to help me forgive people. Asking the Holy Spirit, you need to be the power source on this one. You need to be the inspiration for this, because I don't know how to do this. And he gave me because, well, here's the question. How do you know if you really forgave somebody?
Right.
And typically say, okay, God, I forgive them all. Well, okay, that's a good start. We got a lot of work to do after that. And then one by one, so finally I thought, well, how will I know? So this was my little self-test. I had to see one of those people at a distance, other side of the fellowship hall, across the street downtown. And the instant I saw him, I had to immediately have the desire inside to walk right over to them, look them right in the eye, give them a big hug, and genuinely wish their best interest. I figure, man, if I get to that point, I think I've peeled off most of the layers of that onion to get to the core of forgiveness. So that became my journey. For a couple people, it happened pretty quick. For a bunch of people, it took anywhere from 6 months, 9 months to a year. And for a couple people, it took a good 2 years to finally get to that point. But here's the discovery. When you completely, fully forgive the people that wounded you, like Jesus did on the cross, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. When you get to that point, you've been down this long pathway, and your breakthrough is into freedom, like you've never experienced it before. And that's what I experienced. God set me free. In fact, The scene from the end of the Shawshank Redemption is a pretty good one. Well, the guy crawls through the tunnel with all the stuff, and he's out there and just raises his arms up in the rain. That was like, okay, that's freedom. And that's what God gave me through that process. So it was hard, it was difficult, and only one person of all those people ever said they were sorry.
One?
One.
Wow.
So what I learned is, do not hinge your forgiveness on somebody else's response.
Absolutely.
Because the only person that unforgiveness hurts is the person holding it. So I would either self-destruct, stay depressed, or forgive and then experience freedom. And it was and continues to be amazing.
So I'm going to touch back a little bit on how you were raised.
Yeah.
And then what you went through,
Mm-hmm.
because how you were raised was a little bit more, I would say, kind of sweep it under the rug,
Sure.
ignore it, you
Yep,
know,
no big thing.
oh, la 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 la, it's not bugging me. So had you taken that route and just kind of numbed yourself
Yeah.
to it,
Mm-hmm.
do you think you would have experienced the same kind of freedom than what you went through to get through the process of forgiveness?
No, I would have been enslaved to my unforgiveness for the rest of my life.
And that just would just eat your insides.
It
And
would.
you know, I think a lot of people don't realize that,
Yeah.
like what you just said
Sure.
about forgiveness.
Yes. And when you're coaching people, you can't really coach them into and through something you haven't experienced nearly as well. I mean, it doesn't mean that you have to experience everything that people go through to do it, but it's pretty hard to coach somebody down the path of forgiveness of something really significant if you haven't already done it in your own life.
I agree.
And so as I look back at all the things that I went through, especially the tough things, those are the experiences that God has completely redeemed, completely restored, and uses for his kingdom purpose in the lives of other people so that I can connect with them on a deep heart level that I never would have if I hadn't been through it. I practically never refer to the good things and all the great things that happened. Yeah, they're wonderful, they're great, I'm thankful for them, but where I learned the most was through the hard things, the difficult things, the painful things. And when other people are going through that, you can walk alongside them with empathy, with compassion, with understanding, with love, with kindness, with gentleness, with patience. And because you've been through it, and the only way I made it through it was somebody who was willing to listen to me. That's why listening became such a valuable part of who I am and my life to others.
Well, I know on a personal note for me, I learned how to forgive everything that happened in New York through watching you and through watching Mom and kind of how you guys handled that and that whole process. Because, I mean, I was watching from afar, and I've already mentioned how angry I was at the time, you know, but it really truly taught me what forgiveness looks like and how to truly do that.
Yeah.
And of course, we all still struggle with it, you know.
Sure, it's not easy,
But
and it's not quick.
But to me, watching you guys go through that it was one of the most devastating things, you know, and it blows my mind that you were able to completely full circle, you know, come all the way back around.
Yep.
And I truly feel like it kind of restored my faith, and it restored, you know,
Praise
a
the
whole
Lord.
bunch of things.
Yep.
And I was willing to go back into a church setting after watching all of that, you know. So
Yep.
I appreciate, and like I said, on a
Yep.
personal note, just thank you for that
Yeah.
example.
Can I tell you one more thing about your mom?
Please.
When God called me to leave, and we can talk about this more, but there's a part of it that fits here.
Yeah.
So it actually happened on January 6, 2002.
Thank you for joining us for part 5 of Journey to Healing and Forgiveness with our guest, John Smith. Tune in on Friday for our conclusion to this series.